The gymnasium of Riverside High School was buzzing with energy that morning. Folding chairs stretched in long rows across the polished wooden floor, each seat filled with proud parents, siblings, and grandparents, craning their necks for a glimpse of the graduates. Banners in the school's blue and gold hung from the rafters, fluttering slightly in the breeze of the air conditioning. Across the stage, a massive sign read in bold letters, "Congratulations, Class of 2025. Music played softly over the speakers, a medley of upbeat pop and traditional processional tunes. Teachers bustled around near the stage, making sure the order of speeches was correct, while students in black caps and gowns clustered together, nervously adjusting tassels and joking with friends to hide their jitters. Amid the celebration, a young black man named Jordan approached the entrance doors with his family. His mother held her phone up, already recording, her eyes shining with tears of pride. His little sister clutched a handmade sign with glitter letters, spelling out, "Go Jordan." His father, dressed neatly in a pressed shirt, patted him on the shoulder as they neared the line of graduates waiting to check in. Jordan wore the standard black cap and gown, the fabric pressed and gleaming under the sun that streamed through the wide glass doors. In his hand, he carried a small folder, his speech notes. He walked with quiet confidence, his head held high, his eyes sweeping across the decorations that marked this day as one of the biggest milestones of his life. To him, this moment was about more than a diploma. It was proof of years of late nights studying, of pushing past doubt, of refusing to let obstacles define him. He wasn't just walking into a graduation ceremony, he was walking toward a future he had fought hard to claim. As his family cheered softly behind him, Jordan reached the main entrance, excitement buzzing in his chest. Inside, his name would soon be called, his accomplishments announced. He had no idea that before he could step foot in that gymnasium, he was about to be tested in a way no graduate should ever face. As Jordan reached the double doors, his family trailing happily behind him, a sudden shadow fell across his path. A uniformed security guard, stocky and middle-aged, stepped forward and raised an arm, blocking the way. "Hold it right there," the guard barked, his voice carrying just enough bite to silence the chatter near the entrance. Jordan blinked, confused, his hand still holding the folder of notes. "Sir?" he asked politely. The guard gave him a long, scrutinizing look, his eyes narrowing under the brim of his cap. "You can't come in here without proof you belong. Let's see your ticket. Or an ID. Something." Jordan shifted uneasily. "I'm a graduate," he said, his tone even. He gestured to the cap and gown draped neatly over him, the tassel hanging straight from his mortarboard. "I'm supposed to be here." But the guard didn't move. He folded his arms across his chest, his stance widening as though bracing for resistance. "Nice costume," he muttered. "But I've seen people try to sneak into these things before. Not on my watch." Families waiting to get in began to pause, their conversations fading as they noticed the confrontation. A few parents frowned. A couple of kids glanced nervously between Jordan and the guard. The cheer of the celebration seemed to dim under the weight of the exchange. Jordan's mother stepped forward, her voice tight with indignation. "This is my son's graduation." He worked for this moment, but the guard waved her off, his gaze still locked on Jordan. "Rules are rules. Show me some proof or step aside. You don't just walk in here because you say so." The absurdity of it hung in the air. Jordan's cap and gown should have been enough. His family's presence, their signs and tears, should have been enough. But the guard's suspicion was immovable. Jordan straightened, his jaw tightening. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. Instead, he held the guard's gaze, the humiliation settling heavy in his chest. Behind him, whispers began to ripple through the waiting crowd. Some shook their heads, others simply watched, silent witnesses to the moment. Jordan had come prepared to deliver a speech to his classmates. Now he was being forced to defend his right to even walk through the door. The hallway outside the gym grew uncomfortably quiet as the guard planted himself in front of Jordan like an immovable wall. The festive atmosphere that had filled the building moments ago now felt stifled, heavy with unease. Jordan shifted the folder of notes in his hands, his throat tightening. He had rehearsed lines for his speech, words of hope and determination, but not a single word to defend himself against suspicion like this. Sir, he said carefully, his voice calm but firm, I don't know what more proof you need. This is the cap and gown the school gave me. My name's on the list. I've spent 4 years working toward this. The guard's lips curled into a skeptical smirk. And I've spent years keeping out troublemakers. You don't just walk in here looking like that and expect me to take your word for it. Empty your pockets. Show me what's in that folder. Jordan's chest tightened, his dignity under assault. Around them, the audience waiting to be seated began to whisper more loudly. A mother in a floral dress muttered to her husband, He's clearly graduating. Look at him. A couple of students glanced nervously at Jordan, then looked away quickly, ashamed of what they were witnessing but unwilling to intervene. Jordan's father stepped forward, his jaw set. This is outrageous. He's not sneaking in. He's earned his place. But the guard barely acknowledged him, puffing out his chest with the authority of someone who believed he had the upper hand. If he belongs here, he can prove it. Otherwise, he's out. Humiliation spread like fire in Jordan's veins. He wanted to shout, to demand the respect he deserved, but something in him refused to give the guard that satisfaction. Instead, he straightened his shoulders, standing taller in his gown. He clutched the folder closer to his chest, not to hide anything, but to protect the speech he had written, words that meant more than this ugly moment. The whispers grew into a hush, every eye locked on the standoff. The music inside the gym swelled faintly as the ceremony prepared to begin. Yet here at the doors, Jordan remained blocked, denied entry to the celebration he had worked for, and all he could do was stand his ground with dignity while waiting for someone in authority to see the truth. The crowd in the hallway had swelled. Parents holding bouquets, siblings with balloons, and friends with phones in hand all found their attention drawn to the tense standoff at the door. What should have been a morning of celebration now felt more like a trial. Jordan stood tall, his cap slightly tilted, his tassels swaying as he shifted his weight. He could feel every set of eyes on him, some sympathetic, others uncertain, all of them waiting. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the weight of being put on display, as though his worth was a question to be debated. The guard didn't budge. Arms folded across his chest, he tapped one boot impatiently against the tile. We're wasting time, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. This ceremony's about to start, and we can't let people like him just wander in without clearance. The phrase people like him spread through the crowd like a sour note. A few gasps escaped, followed by murmurs of disapproval. A father in the back whispered angrily to his wife, He's wearing a cap and gown, for God's sake. What more proof does the man need? Jordan's mother bristled, her voice breaking through the noise. My son belongs here. He's worked harder than you could imagine to stand in that gym today. But the guard waved her off with a dismissive gesture, puffing himself up with authority he thought was unquestionable. His voice rose again, sharp and grating. Until I see proof, he's not going anywhere. Rules are rules. Jordan kept his eyes forward, refusing to let his anger show. He knew that if he snapped, if he so much as raised his voice, it would only fuel the guard's suspicion. Instead, he breathed deeply, his fingers tightening around the folder of notes he still clutched to his chest. The energy in the hallway grew heavier. Parents and students alike shifted uncomfortably, their excitement for the day soured by the scene unfolding at the doors. Every second that passed stretched painfully long, every whisper adding to the weight pressing down on Jordan's shoulders. Then, just as the tension threatened to boil over, the double doors leading into the gym swung open. A familiar figure stepped through, heels clicking against the polished floor. It was Principal Martinez, her sharp suit and calm expression commanding immediate attention. The crowd hushed, all eyes turned to her, and in that instant, the balance of power began to shift. The sound of Principal Martinez's heels echoed through the hallway as she strode toward the scene, her eyes sharp and focused. The murmurs faded into silence, every parent and student now watching the principal with a mixture of relief and anticipation. What's going on here? She asked firmly, her voice cutting through the thick tension. The guard straightened his posture, puffing out his chest as though eager to show he was in control. Principal Martinez, don't worry. I stopped someone from sneaking in. He doesn't have proof he belongs." He jabbed a finger toward Jordan, who stood silently, cap and gown immaculate, clutching his folder tightly against his chest. The principal's gaze flicked from the guard to Jordan. Her expression did not waver, but her jaw tightened ever so slightly. "Sneaking in?" she repeated slowly, as if testing the words for their absurdity. The guard nodded, clearly expecting praise for his vigilance. "Yes, ma'am. No ticket, no ID. I've seen this before." Thought it was better to stop him before he slipped past. A hush swept through the crowd. Jordan's mother looked ready to shout, but her son placed a calming hand on her arm, silently urging her to wait. Principal Martinez stepped closer, her eyes steady on Jordan now. For a long moment, she said nothing, simply studying him. Jordan met her gaze without flinching, though inside, his heart was pounding. Finally, she turned back to the guard. Her tone was calm but icy. "Do you know who this young man is?" The guard blinked, taken aback. "Well, no, not exactly, but I know he doesn't belong here without proof." The principal's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, not of amusement, but of a certainty that the guard's ignorance was about to be exposed. She lifted her chin and said clearly, for everyone to hear, "This young man is not only a graduate of Riverside High. He is our valedictorian." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Parents exchanged wide-eyed glances, students whispered in shock, and Jordan's mother let out a small sob of pride. The guard's face drained of color, his smug confidence collapsing into stunned disbelief. The hallway, once heavy with humiliation, now buzzed with a different kind of energy, the anticipation of a truth about to be revealed in full. The guard's mouth opened, then closed again, no words managing to escape. His authority, once worn like a badge, now hung around his shoulders like a weight he could no longer carry. The crowd's reaction made it impossible to ignore. The murmurs of disbelief, the gasps of outrage, the shifting eyes that now condemned him instead of Jordan. Principal Martinez didn't waste time. She reached into the sleek leather folder tucked under her arm and withdrew a small velvet box. Its dark cover caught the overhead lights as she snapped it open, revealing a gleaming gold medal on a blue ribbon. The Valedictorian medal. The crowd leaned closer as though witnessing something sacred. Turning to Jordan, the principal's voice softened, carrying not only authority but also warmth. "Jordan Williams," she said, enunciating his name with pride, "you have earned this through your hard work, your determination, and your excellence. And no one can take that away from you." She lifted the ribbon and, with deliberate care, placed it around his neck. The medal rested against his gown, catching the light, a symbol of achievement that shone brighter than the suspicion he had just endured. The hallway erupted in applause. Parents clapped loudly, students cheered, and Jordan's family's voices rang above the rest, their pride overflowing. His little sister jumped up and down, pointing at him with her glittery sign, tears running down his mother's cheeks as she filmed every second. Jordan stood taller, the weight of humiliation sliding off his shoulders, replaced by the heavy, welcome weight of honor. He looked out over the crowd, his chest rising with a deep breath, his eyes shining. The guard stepped back, his face crimson, his earlier confidence shriveled into silence. He couldn't meet Jordan's eyes, nor anyone else's. The truth was too loud, too undeniable. And yet, Jordan didn't gloat. He didn't sneer. He simply nodded respectfully to the principal, his dignity intact, his character unshaken. For in that moment, the medal around his neck was more than an award. It was proof, not only of his brilliance, but of his strength to endure and rise above. The applause rolled through the hallway like a wave, echoing off the high gymnasium walls. For a few moments, it was as though the entire graduation had paused to honor Jordan, their cheers and claps drowning out every trace of the ugly confrontation that had come before. Principal Martinez raised her hand gently, and the noise softened. She turned to the crowd, her voice clear and steady, carrying the authority of her position, but also the conviction of someone who meant every word. "Graduation is about honoring hard work, dedication, and the promise of a brighter future," she said. "It is not a place for prejudice. It is not a place for assumptions. And it is certainly not a place where any student should be told they don't belong." She let her gaze sweep across the gathered parents, students, and the guard who now stood red-faced and small against the wall. Jordan Williams has earned the highest honor this school can give, and his dignity, like that of every graduate here, will always be respected. The words landed with weight, but also with hope. Some parents nodded, others murmured their agreement, and a few even clapped again in support. Jordan glanced at his mother, whose tears of pride streamed freely down her cheeks. His father stood tall, jaw firm, his eyes gleaming with quiet triumph. His sister waved her glittery sign with renewed enthusiasm, beaming as though her brother had just won the world. With the medal resting proudly against his chest, Jordan finally stepped past the guard, who moved aside in shame, unable to look him in the eye. The teen walked through the double doors into the gym, his family close behind. Inside, the band struck up the familiar notes of the graduation march. Students in gowns turned to watch as Jordan entered, some clapping, others whispering in awe as they spotted the medal already around his neck. He walked with his head held high, not out of arrogance, but out of the unshakable knowledge that he belonged there, and always had. For the guard, the lesson was bitter. For the crowd, it was unforgettable. And for Jordan, it was the beginning of a future where no one could ever again question his place.